All right, good morning. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm your host, Samantha Studebaker-Carl, and I'm broadcasting to you from beautiful Indianapolis, Indiana. I think we're going to have 70-degree weather here today, which will be nice. And yeah, I know, right? It's amazing. But before we get going with our discussion, first of all, the reason we're here, we're talking about this book, Leonardo and Gabriel by Tim Tigner. And we're on the chapter, we're continuing with the chapter arguments because I think we've got another point to go over with that. And then hopefully we'll move into the next chapter as well. But before we do that, I want to give my friends an opportunity to introduce themselves. And so go ahead and jump out, guys.
Good morning. This is Catherine Clement in Shawnee, Oklahoma.
Good morning, Dan Sisek in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'll be honest, kind of odd to hear you say Oklahoma because I've heard you say Boulder, Colorado for so long. But I'm glad you're safe and you're okay, and hopefully doing better, and looking forward to continuing on with the chapter.
I know I felt that too, Dan. She said that. Um, I'm glad that you're someplace safe and you're able to. Um, I'm sad that you had to move out of the place that you were in, Catherine. My heart goes out to you and to your family. And I'm hoping. I know that with everything that's going on in the world right now with the COVID-19 thing, that there's a lot of people that have been displaced from their homes and who've been affected by the way that the what's the word I'm looking for? Just all of the lockdown for everybody and trying to keep one another away from one another so that we don't get sick or we don't spread the illness anymore. And so my heart goes out to everyone, and I hope that you're all safe out there and that you're not being affected by this. And if you are, then we're certainly praying for you. So anyway, in this chapter arguments, last time we talked about time because the discussion at the end of the previous chapter was that Gabriel had told Leonardo that God is time, time is God, and so therefore we started into that discussion last week. I think we've kind of talked about it a little bit over the past few weeks of our opinions and thoughts towards this idea of God being time, and and so if you're just now jumping into our discussion, I encourage you to go back and listen to some of the other ones because we've been all over the place with this. And but in this, I think kind of one of the last thoughts that I had relating to this concept was that I'm just rejecting it because of my feelings about what time is. And in kind of in the end of this chapter, Leonardo and Gabriel are kind of having the same thought. As Leonardo was, he's like, my thought is that time is a measurement of existence, and that was what I'm talking about as well. Is this our movement through space, and that time is a measurement of that, or as it's the name of the measurement of our movement through space, and that's my thought process on it. And but then Gabriel goes on and he says, but as you're about to see, it's only a partial definition. And he asked him if he was familiar with the fable of the four blindfolded men and the elephant. And so I'll tell you what that is. It says four blindfolded men are led into a room that contains an elephant. One has his hands placed on the tail, another on the trunk, a third on the ear, and a fourth on the tusk. Each is told that he is touching an elephant and is asked to describe the animal to the others from where he stands, and each describes an entirely different beast. They argue with passion and fervor about what the elephant is, each certain of his description because of what he feels with his own hands. Then the blindfolds are removed, and each sees how short-sighted he has been. I remember now. Oh, I don't know why it says that, but anyway, each sees how short-sighted he's been. Okay, so then Gabriel says, to get at the truth, you often need to move beyond the apparent answer. You need to be willing to abandon your current comfortable footing and reach the unknown. And he says, you are about to see that time is, and in fact also must be, a force. And and so I guess, good morning, Karen. Good to see you. Glad to have you on. And so I'm thinking, with this being said, is that in order for us to kind of move forward as we do, we have to drop our ideas of what we typically think that time is, or at least my own personal interpretation of it, because I feel like in order to move forward with this discussion, we kind of have to look at it from a different perspective. And so that's what we're kind of trying to open ourselves up to in this conversation. And the next question that Gabriel asked to Leonardo is, he says, what is left of the world if you take away time? And for me, when the first thing that kind of came up for me when I saw that question was two things. One was, without time, there's no future, there's no past, there's only the now. And but then I also was kind of a thought process of when Gabriel's talking about time as a force. My also immediate reaction is that time is not the force. Time is not the thing that causes stuff to move. And so that's another thing that causes me to kind of reject this idea. But we're going to try and be open-minded here and see where we go from there. So for you guys, when he says, what's left of the world if you take away time, what was your thought?
That about the idea about time being a force, and if there's no future and no past, and you're stuck in that moment, and if there's no relevancy to know that you're stuck in the moment, what are you going to do to move forward? Because you're not going to have any reference of what was past, and you're not going to have every reference of anything going forward. So you're going to be stuck in this very best way to put it. I don't want to use this term, but abysmal nothingness, because you have no idea that you're in this moment in time. So therefore, you have nothing really to propel you forward, nothing really to prepare you to look, or to help you look back to see where you have been. So would you do anything? And that's kind of where I'm at, because without knowing and understanding from the past and knowing what is the possibility of the future, and not knowing the difference between that, where would you go? What would you do? What would your life be in this now because of no reference?
I'd get a lot more sleep.
I think we all would.
That's a good one, Catherine. What do you think, Karen? If there was no time, or time did not exist, what was this question? What's left of the world if you take away time? What do you think?
Well, I'm certainly back to the concept, or to my awareness that this is a concept that I can't seem to make any kind of sense of, and really never have. Um, there's been other times when the subject of time has come up, and I've just felt completely out of the loop, out of trying to understand. I mean, how would you take steps? What kind of meaning would there be to learning the steps to take to something, to say, to make a dish for dinner. First you do this, second you do that, then you do that. After you finish up with this, none of these things seem to have any connection or any concept. I already can't even scope. Millions of years ago, I was reading about the asteroid that supposedly skimmed by the Earth about a week ago, and trying to get the difference, remind myself the difference between asteroids and comets and that kind of thing. And they now believe, well, I guess they've been believing since 1980, which was past all the time that I was schooling. Even my university schooling was done by 1980. And in fact, having my two children was done by 1980. And I guess I must not have read the newspapers or had chats with my friends about this, but kind of one of the new ideas was that the dinosaur era ended with an asteroid hitting the Earth, and I thought, it still doesn't really have that kind of meaning for me. I mean, it's way beyond what I can imagine. So I don't think you I don't think you need to know what I think about time. It's just not that helpful.
I think it's hard to. I mean, obviously, we can't really even exist without time, and I say that in the respect of time, the movement, our movement in the universe. We can't exist without this knowledge of the movement that we have experienced and the idea of what we might experience for the future. And and I struggle with this whole aspect of time being a thing, just because from 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 my perspective, time is a measurement. So it's hard for me to wrap my head around this idea of time being a thing. But if we switch this around, and for me, if we try and look at this topic of time, instead of using the word time, but instead we use the word um, energy, or I don't know, movement, or something along that lines, then for me I don't know, it is easier to conceptualize. I don't know. Um, and so when we talk about this at the end of the chapter, Leonardo, he's saying, try as he might to find other avenues or approaches to strip or to sort or to stack the logic in alternative ways, he always arrived at the same conclusion. A single, simple, stark answer: nothing. There was nothing without time. And that's kind of, that's my thought on it too. And even I think last week I even mentioned that I'd read through a number of different scientific theories and articles and journals and this and that and the other about time and what time is, and they were all kind of coming to the same kind of conclusion of, without time there's no conceptualizing anything. And so I guess if we kind of start there and then we move into this next chapter, as we just start with, okay, without time there isn't anything, then so then we go into the next chapter, and let me get to the spot here. First, Gabriel's wanting to know if Leonardo wants to review. He says, I don't really need to review. We just know that we need to have an open mind based on the fable of the elephant. Obviously, we aren't seeing the whole big picture, and of course we talked about that before in our discussions too. Is that as humans we we can only see what we're capable of seeing as humans. There's so much more to everything that that we just can't see because we don't have the senses to do so. So if we kind of look at everything in that respect, then let's see. Gabriel says, let us proceed with our original plan, our mathematical operation. Talk yourself through the list of defining qualities one by one, and let's see if we can convince yourself that time solves for God. And so then Gabriel's got the list, and the first one on the list is actions. And let's see here. He kind of rearranged the attributes according to first the way that they're coming up with them. They came up with them in one order, and now he's rearranged them and started with actions as the first one. And he says, Leonardo began with the first. Is time the unmoved mover? In other words, did time start at all? By definition, of course it did. By definition, before time there was nothing. That seems so obvious now. Okay, and then he says, I want to dig deeper. Okay, so actions as far as the unmoved mover. What do you guys think about that? I'm going to read forward just a little bit, and if you guys have any thoughts on it so far.
Yeah, I have a couple thoughts, but I'm trying to put them in a way that I can, because I kind of agree that before time that we conceptualized there was nothing, but I believe that God, the universe, infinite intelligence, whatever created all this, existed before time as we understand it, not necessarily as time as a matter. Because to me, I believe that God, the universe, infinite intelligence, however you want to look at it, was, is, and always will be. It has never started, and will never end. So to me, I think it's just in how we conceptualize it. And going back to that time question, we perceive as time as movement, for lack of a better way of expounding on it, and that's how we gauge our lives. But I think this is what Gable was trying to get us to look at. I think there's some additional part of time, force, energy, or something that we're not capable yet, or some are working towards that capability of understanding the other aspect of time that we don't get yet, to help us understand and maybe can wrap our heads around the whole essence of time in a more fuller degree. And that's about the best way I can say it, based on what they were just talking about in just even the beginning of this chapter.
So further into the chapter, Leonardo's kind of just rolling this around in his head, and he's saying, is there anything else? Is there anything else that could be considered to have started at all? And he says, the chemist in me is inclined to consider various forms of energy, heat, or light, but neither survives even cursory scrutiny. They're entirely insufficient. All are impotent without time. And the only apparent alternative is the wizened old man with a wand, which logically we know to be no alternative at all. So then he starts talking about, he says, did time create everything? This one feels a bit more slippery. And then Gabriel says, try switching your perspective. He says, come at it from the other side. And then they go on, is there anything without time? Well, clearly there's no movement, and without movement, you can't have change or growth or life. So no, there's nothing without time. Therefore, we can conclude that time makes everything possible. And so then he continues, could the same be said of anything else? Was there another all-empowering force? Nothing trumps time. In fact, even a wizened old man with a magic wand is powerless without time. So Leonardo felt like he could stop there and be content with the conclusion, intellectually and spiritually, but he pressed on. Okay, so then we're going into the next aspect of it. So I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, I guess if we're looking at time as a force instead of a measurement of movement, then time being the force that causes all things to uh, exist in our plane of reality, then, through this argument, I mean, I guess that, yeah, time is the force. I guess. Does that make sense? I'm like, this is one of those chapters or this book and the concepts are, yeah.
Yeah, that there was something there that we still aren't fully getting, and we're looking at time as the measurement. But I think that without it, you have nothing to. There's nothing, and I think that's kind of what I just wasn't saying it as concisely as they just did. But I think that's where the conclusion I come to, and therefore I can accept that and move forward, and accept it and move forward for me personally.
I don't know. I agree that I look at it more maybe like airtime. Um, could we be here speaking to each other if there wasn't a dimension to go do that in? But I think that there's so many different dimensions, experiences. The measurement of time is experienced differently in each one of those worlds or universes or whatever you want to call them. Maybe it's not measured at all in some of them. At one point it wasn't measured in this one, but things continued on. But does a show exist if it doesn't get to play on CBS? Yeah, if they made the show, it does. I think even with this expanded definition of time, I still don't think that makes time God. And I'll explain that more as we get further on, because I read the book 2 or 3 times. I just haven't revisited it. That was months ago when I read it, but I'm pretty sure that this is the chapter where they go into more what I'm going to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like in order for us to accept this this concept is that we have to put aside our knowledge of time, what we know about time, and or we know what we know about the concept of time. And I was reading another article this morning that was like a theory on time and thermodynamics, and to be honest, I didn't understand most of it, but the one thing that he said in there was that it was kind of like the underlying thought of the theory was that something created the uh, uh, the platform for everything to exist within, and still there's like no defining thing of what that could possibly be. And so it comes back to that time wouldn't exist if there wasn't everything, and everything wouldn't exist if there wasn't this movement. It's a circular thing. It's like, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, it's just and then even if you're looking at, okay, so there's this field, if you will, because that's kind of what he's talking about, is this kind of quantum field, or this lattice of existence, or whatever, this platform for everything to be inside of, or on, or I don't even know if those words even make any sense, but it still, that means, okay, well, what's outside of that, or what is what is in the non lattice, or the non universe, or I don't know, it's there's yeah. There was another thought that I had, but now I lost it. So, okay. Oh, maybe it'll come back around to me. So the next section, it says, he's talking about the next kind of thing on there, that, or the next list, is that God judges. And
Where,
then he says,
where,
does
where are we at again, Billy? I
I'm
lost my spot. Where are we at again?
on, we're in the chapter confirmation. And I don't know if your pages line up with mine, since you got the digital version,
Okay.
but it says it's like page 101 on mine. So does God judge, or does time judge? Excuse me. A few thoughts immediately entered his mind. It is often said that time judges all things, and only time will tell. But those aren't literal attributions, are they? Are you asking a process question? How judging is accomplished? And he says, again, I bring you back to the fact we established earlier on. To be all seeing and all knowing, God cannot be corporeal, just as there's no fleshy eyes and ears hovering everywhere. There's no big body of gray matter in the sky. Given the lack of physical repository, you must ask yourself, where is that judgment stored? Where is it contained? And Leonardo says, in time. And then and then Gabriel's like, that's right, judgment is contained in time, and to answer the logical follow-on, transmitted by people through their words, memories, and emotions. And that's how judgment is reflected back on the actor, how God judges every notable act. I don't know. That comes back to, what is judgment? What does that really even mean, judgment? I mean, if we're just talking about, again, it comes back to like kind of the scientific explanations of cause and effect. If you do this one thing, you're going to have this effect from it, and I don't feel like that is necessarily a judgment, because I feel like judgment is totally a human emotional quality, and that it's because we decide you know whether it's good or bad. That it's the whole judgment thing is whether or not it's good or bad, and I don't feel like that's how the world works. It's not about whether it's good or bad. It's about cause and effect. If you do this thing, it's going to have this effect on whatever it is that you're taking an action upon. Um, I don't know. What do you guys think about the judgment aspect of it?
Well, if they're, like you said, if they're saying that time judges because an effect happens after an action, then I guess I could agree with that, but I don't believe that God is time, first of all, and I don't believe that God judges. So just like the four people and the elephant, they could have killed each other literally over the difference in what they were describing. Every one of them, if they wanted to, could have fought to death to defend their position on what an elephant was based on their limited perception with their eyes closed. People do the same thing. They
Oh,
judge
sorry,
other
Karen. Finish.
people with their limited perception of their actions, which leads a little bit towards the book that we were talking about reading next time, um, because it's about a lawyer that defends prisoners, and basically what it boils down to is he says if you understood their life and what they've been through, you wouldn't judge them for what they did and wound up in jail for or whatever, or how they act. And I think that's very true. I think people are constantly judging other people, and the thing about judgment, even in human form, is that it's based on such little information, and that's why I believe God doesn't judge, because I think God sees the whole picture, you know. And also, I believe, and I'm not asking anybody else to, but I believe that we are eternal souls that plan this life before we come in, plan the people we're going to be with, all of that. And we're all contributing to each other's growth and development, basically. Um, and therefore, somebody has to play the bad guy in the movie, you know, somebody has to be the bad guy. And that's not always an easy role to play. And so to me, when I see somebody who is doing something that the rest of the world would deem horrible, say a pedophile or something like that, what I think is, I mean, of course, I don't want anybody being a pedophile. First of all, let me make that very clear, okay? But there's a bigger part of me that says, oh my God, what a brave soul to take on such a, disgusting role that everybody despises this person. The one thing, and I think that's been made quite clear with this whole virus situation, the one thing that humans seem to crave, most humans, is other humans. So imagine coming in and being born with a disposition, a sexual desire for something that is prohibited, but it's not like you can change that. That's something that's just wired into you. Like, do you like chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream or strawberry ice cream better? It's not something that you necessarily choose. You just kind of like one of them better, and that's how I look at some of these horrible acts. These souls were brave. They chose this mission that pits them against almost everybody in society except other people that are in that same kind of position. And when I see a homeless person, I see a very old wise soul, standing there in the humblest of positions begging people for money. That's Most of us couldn't do that. you know Most of us couldn't handle the hate that comes towards some of those people. Um, and all of that judgment is typically based on things that person has been taught. It may not even be things that they actually believe. It's just something that, you know, their family always told them was bad, or what, like, judgment is, to me, a purely human thing. It has nothing to do with God.
Yeah, I agree with you, Catherine, on the aspect of judgment is totally a human thing, and so yeah, this whole concept is just I can't without dropping my own ideas of what I think judgment is and what I think time is and all of that. It's for me it's impossible for me to wrap my head around this idea that God is time. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
I think that's part of the difficulty that we all have is we are those four men with the elephant, and we're also because of this perspectives and what we have. I don't know how to say this in a way that pass through, move through, experienced. I don't know what's the best term in our existence that are only plausible and understandable through our perceptions because you you can't really reference anything from my perspective outside of what I explain to you or tell you because you're not in my personal physical space and we can't really get into that space that each other has. So therefore, even we can maybe understand to a small degree other people's perspectives because similar things. But I think again, going back to pulling away all our own experience or what we've lived through or I don't know how to say this that gives us that perspective to where we're at and when we're feeding that elephant we're like oh no it's really this but somebody else who's touching the same or going through or within that same realm where we're at says no it's really this yeah it's and until we strip away and pull back the veil so to speak to where we're all able to see and understand that same perspective I don't think we'll ever agree but I do agree with Catherine. I think we are uh, eternal souls that we do continue on. I think, like she says, we're in this plane of the reality of whatever we're going through as part of that journey. Um, but, but yeah, this book's really pushing the limits of my thoughts and how I look at life and making me really look at things too. I never thought a book that was so short and so simple to read would make me think like this. It's interesting.
I just had a thought when you guys were talking, and I feel like in order to embrace this idea that he is conceptualizing in here, is we actually have to put more veil on and take ourselves back to when we did not have understandings of space and time and and otherworldly anything. We'd have to like squash down our knowledge. He's saying we need to open our eyes to this and see more than what there is to see. But I think in reality that if this book was written back in the 1500s, we would have to expand our minds. But this book is written much sooner, much more recently than that, and he's asking us, in my opinion, to squash down our scientific ideas, to squash down our concept of what we think time is and what we think judgment is. And wouldn't you agree, Catherine? He's asking us to, instead of open our minds, he's asking us to close our minds. And I think that's why I have such a big rub with this.
I definitely agree with that.
So
I agree with that too, because we have expanded our knowledge and our understanding of so many things out there and what is out there through scientists and through exploration and expanding. So therefore, stripping it all away, I think helps get us back to a more basic level, I guess. I'm not sure how to say that, but yeah, I agree also.
Now, interestingly enough, just to make a point here, I have never truly believed that the Ten Commandments came from God. I just always believed that that was something that men made up, a thought that popped into their head that they thought was God talking to them. But I have to say, because of this one commandment, that gives me somehow a little bit of pause, because I don't think a human would say, do not judge, because humans judge all the time, you know? And the whole concept of what do you mean, do not judge? Um, that gives me a little bit of pause that maybe somehow these really truly were the at least that commandment was truly inspired by God.
okay, so to continue with this chapter, he goes through the additional things that were on the list of omnipotent and suggests, with time, all things in time, with time, all things are possible. And then let's see here on, is there anything that time does not make possible? And again, we're inside of this existence where we're flowing, and so obviously within this plane of existence, time is in existence, and so therefore it kind of all comes together as far as that is concerned. um, then he's talking about omniscience. um, Time bears witness to everything. um, and omnipresence, that one is even more, well, okay, let's see, no place is untouched by time. So I mean, if we're kind of like narrowing down our idea of what time is, then sure, then all of these different things on the list make sense. But again, I feel like we're narrowing down or closing our minds to so much more that you know. So I don't know. That's what it kind of boils down to for this chapter. And I don't know. I guess we just kind of let everybody stew on that before we move into the next chapter next week for conclusion. Anybody else have final thoughts for today?
I really apologize that I have been so sparse in this whole, participate in this whole thing. I don't even know what you said most of the time, which I really hate because I love what each of you contributes. Stop me. Somebody please stop me if you've already become aware of this. When Dan was reminding us about the viewpoint of the four men feeling the different places of the elephant and making their conclusions as to what the elephant was, I was made aware that Dr. Phil was doing he was filling his time on air by Zooming from his kitchen. He was contacting a couple people to talk with from his kitchen, and one person that he talked with was a girl who's going to Rutgers, and she went down, I think, to a beach in Miami, if I'm accurate about that. And in the process, she rode on a private plane and licked the toilet seat, and she went down there and did all kinds of, social non-distancing behaviors with lots of different people, and just carrying on how she thinks there's a lot of fake news because she made some fake news out of that, which in my opinion wasn't fake news. It was just a bold lie because she had, she had bleached the toilet seat and she had done all kinds of things to indicate, that it wasn't what she was indicating that it was. She was simply trying to up her numbers in her social media, and Fox News had taken her up on reporting what she had done. And as I thought about that and the idea of fake news, and she's convinced that Dr. Phil's generation, which of course is my generation, are being selfish because we don't want to die and we don't want the young people to get the virus. They're not going to die. But anyway, it was a little bit mind-bending to me, I guess, that someone could be so selfish and so gross and find that such an appropriate way to be. I did catch what you were saying, Catherine, that there has to be a bad guy. I'll tell you what, there's nothing in my mind like a bad female. That's really, really gross to me. So, but anyway, it does point out that we can have completely different ends of the elephant to contend with. That was my contribution for now.
I think it must be in the next chapter where it talks about what I was going to continue on with, so that'll wait till next week.
Sounds good. We're a little past the top of the hour today anyway, and I know we could keep on going. But yeah, I think that we'll just pick up next week, and let me see how many chapters we have left. I know we only have a couple. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 maybe? Yeah, okay, 3 chapters left, so 3 weeks potentially left. And so we're going to be looking at getting into another book soon. So I posted a question in the community, the Facebook community, about picking another book. So if you guys want to jump over there and just make a suggestion, and hopefully that'll spark some other folks to make some suggestions as well. And That's it for today, guys, I guess. Have an awesome, amazing, and wonderful week, and we'll see you next time on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. Bye for now.